Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Kirby Russia. You may recognize this man right next to me as the American in Crimea, but we know him as Kevin. And I do believe your last name is pronounced Michelezzi, right? Or wrong?
Michelizzi.
Michelizzi. Okay, I must have misled you.
Italian. It's like pizza.
Like pizza. Hey. Okay, so Kevin Michelizzi. I will know that from now on. I said it in the more American eye. But anyways, Kevin, we're not here to talk about the pronunciation of your last name. We're here to talk about two major issues. The first issue is unfortunately a sad one. It is the attack by an ATACMS rocket on the beach, on people enjoying their holiday vacations there on the beach. And the issue number two is the potential closing of the sort of like visa centers for Americans who might want to visit Russia. That's sad, but obviously no one's going to die over that. So could you tell us what the hell happened with these rockets? What's the deal with this? What's going on?
Well, unfortunately, as you know, today is a holiday in Russia, the Trinity, and families and tourists were on the beach enjoying the sun and the sea and having a good time with their children. Mm-hmm. One of the ministers, I don't remember what his name was there with his family. Uh-huh. And let me see if I've got that here somewhere. But he's one of the ministers in Sevastopol. So what happened is there were 4 ATACMS missiles, U.S. ATACMS missiles, and they were equipped with cluster bombs. Oh, no. And they, of course, the Russians' air defense shot them down, but what happens when you shoot down a cluster bomb? You got bombs all over the place.
Yeah. All the bomblets go here and there and all that.
Yeah. So what we know at the immediate moment is there are, official statement is about 124 victims. 27 of them are children. 5 are in serious condition. Moscow flew a plane down to Sevastopol and has picked these children up and taken them back to Moscow for treatment so they get the best medical care. Mm-hmm. We do know that there were 3 deaths, and out of those deaths, 2 of them were children. One was this minister's kid.
Okay, so we're talking about 125 people injured, you mean, not killed?
124 injured. 27 children injured, 5 in serious condition. But we also had 3 deaths.
3 deaths. Unbelievable.
2 of them being little kids.
Wow.
So this is, when the United States is feeding everybody that propaganda about we won't allow our missiles to be used anywhere but in the Kharkiv region. Yeah. We know historically that's crud. Yeah.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. If we're playing devil's advocate, and I was the evil Admiral Kirby and not Tim Kirby, well, I could say, the Russians shot them down, and they were on their way to a military target, and this was all an accident.
Yeah, on their way to a military target on the beach that has a whole strip of hotels and tourists, and sorry. And if I was the evil Kevin Blinken.
Kevin Blinken. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I would say, Ukraine was shooting at their own territory. Crimea is Ukraine, so they were shooting at their own people. Oh wait, they can't say that.
Ah. Oh, yeah, that's kind of an interesting sort of logic loop there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. Well,
the reality is
in the past, at least, they got around that. Remember during all those years of the anti-terrorist operation, as Kiev called it, which was the killing of the locals in the Donbass from a Russian perspective. You have to remember that the logic was, well, Russia's actually funding these sort of like, I don't know, I want to call them jihadists, but they're Christians. I don't know what you want to call them. Upstarts and revolutionaries or something. Renegades or whatever word you want to use for them. And so that's okay. You can blow up your own citizens as long as theoretically Russia sort of finances them.
Yeah, because it's a civil war.
I
You know,
see. Yes.
we're taking our government back. Now, on one hand, Kiev says, Crimea is occupied by Russian forces and Russian citizens, and all Ukrainians have been run out.
Mm-hmm.
So, the other argument then is, well, we were shooting at terrorists. Because, everybody that's a Russian citizen living on the peninsula, which is about everybody at this point, we're all terrorists.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that checks all those nice bureaucratic logic boxes. That's one of the things, man, that I tell you is I talk about this a lot when I do all these interviews on Russian TV. One of the scariest things in the world is that bureaucratic logic. It's stuff like that. It's that whatever was written on my piece of paper that I got this morning is the only truth that has ever existed in the universe. It's that mentality that leads to stuff like this. What a mad world. But anyways, the main topic I actually want to talk. So we'll move on from that. I think we've kind of. I don't want to really beat that dead horse. I mean.
Yep.
People getting hurt and killed is bad. Okay. So moving on. What about this closure of visa centers in the United States? I heard about this. Then I said on your channel, American in Crimea, which is very easy to find because it's such a notable name, easy to remember, that you did a whole live stream discussion on this. So I think you have a lot more expertise on it, and that's why you're here with us today. So what is actually happening? Is it going to become impossible for Americans to get visas to visit Russia?
No, and that's why I decided to do the stream on it, because what I was seeing in all of our associated Telegram channels is Americans will never be able to get a visa again. Yeah. That is not true. So, Antonov was informed that the United States is going to force them to close the visa centers.
Yes.
And
which Antonov?
Ambassador.
Oh, the ambassador. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they called him at 7:00 in the morning, our time.
Yeah.
So midnight in New York, and so got the guy out of bed.
Yeah.
And told him, well, we're gonna close down your visa centers, and a lot of people think, gee, there's one in Houston, there's one in New York, there's one in Washington. They're actually all handled by one visa center. You can send your application into Houston, or you can take it into New York, but it ends up going to the same visa center anyway.
And this visa center, is this like is this the government's thing? Or in the past, some countries actually sometimes use like a third party to sort of process all this really quickly for them, and they sort of greenlight it or stamp it? Or what is this place?
No, this is actually the Russian Federation visa center.
Okay.
So in 2007, they had a small group of people at the embassy, and all these applications went there to be processed.
Yeah.
Took 4 to 7 days to process a visa there. Mm-hmm. And what they did is they moved this group outside, actually enlarged the group so that they could process visas more quickly.
Mm.
And so what will happen? There are actually 2 parts of the announcement they got. The other one is they were removing all tax exemptions from the Russian diplomats, which is a violation of international law.
Yeah.
So it's to do 2 things. By closing down the official visa center, they're hoping to slow down the process of people to get visas. They're expecting the reaction we've been seeing on Telegram, which is, I'll never be able to get a visa. What do I do?
It just sends out that message and it makes people panic and give up.
Yes.
Okay.
And it also, because of the loss of the tax exemptions, the Russian Federation now has to pay U.S. federal income tax and state income tax on diplomat salaries, their employees' salaries, all the people who didn't used to have to pay. Mm-hmm. And they also have to pay property taxes. So they're really trying to squeeze Russia.
Property taxes. I thought no matter what happens, any sort of embassy or whatever would be exempt from all that.
Yeah. They,
Huh.
according to international law, they are because it's their sovereign territory.
Yeah.
But United States is removing that exemption.
Rules-based international order, baby.
Yeah,
Wow.
the rules apply to everybody but the guys making the rules.
Yeah, they sure do. That's crazy. So
Yeah.
essentially, now the thing is, again, Kevin, this might sound like a naive question, but that's part of kind of this journalist job. So, for example, if we make some object, I don't know, pencils, we have to have some place where we like get this wood together, and I forget how pencils are made, the graphite and all that, and we have to like
Yep.
physically make these pencils. And if someone throws Molotov cocktails in and burns the building down, we're done. Now, a visa of like the approval to visit another country, that's different. That's not like a factory. So okay, so what? This center or place has been sort of then shut down by force. Why can't Russia process visas in Russia? We're in the 21st century.
Well, reality is they can go back to processing them in the embassy.
Yeah.
Um, and this is what I expect they will do. They will take a core set of these people that are processing visas, they will move them back to the embassy, and they will just continue processing like they did before 2007 when they broke this group off.
Yes, sir.
Now, like I say, they have some additional costs. They're likely to be passed on to Americans applying for visas.
No.
But let's keep in mind that there's a bilateral agreement between the U.S. and Russia that says they have to keep their costs the same, and they have to keep the application process simple for people.
But
Now,
one of the interesting things about that, though, is that Russians in Russia can't apply for tourist visas in Russia anymore at all. So
yeah,
Russia's actually been very merciful about that, because if they really wanted to, they could have done in turn said, okay, go get a visa to visit Russia in Mexico or some other more neutral place.
yeah. Well, and the other thing about it is it's never been equal like it's supposed to be. The cost for a Russian to get a U.S. visa is much higher than it takes for a U.S. person to get a visa to Russia. Back when I got my first visa, it was about $650 to get the visa, a 3-year visa in the United States. Yeah. And Russia actually cut that price in about half, while the United States raised theirs. Oh. The application process to get a Russian visa is very simple compared to what they put Russians through. We helped my wife's cousin fill out an application 4 or 5 years ago. And the questions they ask, it's like a 7-8 page application. And I mean, it's very invasive. And then you have to go and you have to get an appointment. And of course, you can't get an appointment at the embassy in Moscow anymore.
Yeah, you can't get that appointment anywhere within Russia. Except for emergencies. What defines an emergency is also up for debate.
I'm actually finding that people with emergencies, it's only emergency passport renewals. And even those people are being told to go to either Poland or Armenia to renew their passports.
I see.
So they're seeing nobody at this point. So some of the implications, there's a lot of news out there saying, well, Russia can retaliate by throwing more U.S. diplomats out of the country. Well, they've only got 2 or 3 of them working at the embassy now anyway. So, and they have no consulates left open. Yeah. And this was done by the United States. A lot of the Western news is saying, well, this is being done in retaliation for Russia throwing 10 diplomats out, 7-8 years ago after the United States did it to Russia.
Yeah.
So, there's this big propaganda thing around it. Russia has already said that it will not affect processing of visas, other than I expect there will be a small delay while they move everything back.
Well, yeah, because visas back in the olden days were definitely slower.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we could expect that. But then again, you know, you have to kind of know the process on the inside because back in the old days, I'm talking about like your mid 2000s, and just the quality of the internet and all that was different. So who knows? But yeah,
Yeah, and we back there in, the early 2000s, we downloaded from the internet the application, filled it out, you mailed it or FedExed it to them. They'd call you on the phone if they had questions.
yeah.
And, you know, and if you expedited it, you might get it in a week.
Now you mentioned that the process for Russians to apply for an American visa was very invasive. What do you mean by that? You know, I remember generally filling out a lot of American bureaucracy. You get a lot of questions that just seem ridiculous, like I don't know, have you been or are you now or have you ever been a terrorist? No, like
Yeah.
stuff like that. What are you talking
And
about?
following that is, do you have plans to bomb the United States?
No, I can tell you, Kevin, I definitely do not have plans to bomb
Yeah.
or attack the United States in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
That one's the God's honest truth.
But the United States always wants to know from Russians, do you have bank accounts there? How much money do you have in them? Your relatives going back 12 generations,
No.
all these reasons to prove that you won't stay in the United States.
I see.
Russia, you fill out the application, they don't ask a lot of questions like that. So, if I recall, it's like a page and a half application.
Yeah, and also sometimes I think the standards also on paper of some of the stuff they ask for. Like I think they also the Russians had asked for like bank statements, but I don't really know many people who've ever actually really had to provide that. Do they?
I have never been asked for a bank statement.
Yeah, see, it's weird because I think on the embassy site it's written that you do. Oh, well, it's
Yeah, it's written that they can. They can.
Oh,
they
they
can,
can.
ask
Oh.
you for anything they want.
I see. Okay.
The big thing is, why you're going. If it's a private visa, your invitation letter, which ties you to a relative or a friend.
Yeah.
We have a mutual friend that went to Yerevan to the Russian embassy not too long ago to get a new visa.
Yeah.
And they asked for the relationship of the person who gave him the invitation letter, and that was it. So, okay, here's the slip. Go over to the bank, pay it, be back before, they opened at 11, be back before we close at 1 o'clock with the payment slip, and then wait 10 days for the visa. So, very, like this. And that's the
one thing that's
worst.
nice with the Russian government and all this migration stuff. If they say this will be ready on X date, it always is. I don't know how
Yeah.
they do it, but it's that is the one thing that's nice. The rest of the migration process really sucks. But yeah.
Well, I've noticed that, like, when I got my different residency permits,
Yeah.
they would always say 4 to 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I got my temporary residency,
Yeah.
and it was actually stamped a month before they gave it to me. They gave it to me 4 months on the day.
Yeah, that's also kind of part of it, which is weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard that from other people as well.
Yeah, me too.
So, huh.
So, you've still got the visa processing places in the United States that, worst case, you pay them extra money. I never understand why people pay these places extra money when the application really isn't that difficult.
Now, are you talking about like a third party private businesses? Okay.
Yes. So they charge you, an extra $7,500. They fill out the application for you. They tell you what documents to give them. They take it to the embassy, and then they send it back to you afterwards. A simplicity thing. So they will still operate. Now, what have they been doing? They gather all this stuff from you, the application, they send it into the visa processing center.
Yeah.
Now they will have to take it to the embassy or the consulate in New York or Houston. So you may end up paying some additional travel costs in that, or, like I say, additional fees because it will now cost the Russian government more money to process things. But my personal belief in this, and this is my opinion, this is not based on anything I've heard from anybody in the government. I think Russia will actually simplify the process for Americans to get visas, because it is the worst thing that Russia can do to the United States. By doing
that is a bold statement, sir. Okay.
Yep.
All right, I'm listening.
Okay. So the United States is doing this to try to control the narrative. Yeah. Look at some of the channels that have been shut down on YouTube. Some of the ones with bigger followers, Sasha, all those guys. They're getting the word out that life is normal in Russia. Yeah. It's not a bad place. The people are good, but that's not the narrative that the United States wants. Yeah. So a lot of this has to do with controlling the narrative. So if Russia makes the application process simpler for Americans, and they can issue more visas quicker and cheaper, and they can get more people to come here, they're going to take more of that soft power and use it against the United States, because they will have more people who can say, gee, I was there, it's a nice place. This seems like the logical thing for me to do. It would be my recommendation to them anyway.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, Kevin, you're thinking in a very, how should I put it, holistic way of thinking of things. And very often people in the government don't think that way. So I don't know, a lot of things that seem reasonable to the masses don't really suit the government bureaucracy. But I feel you, man, because one thing that also I have noticed is we're going to be facing more and more competition as we both get older and older, and who knows, maybe we'll be deposed from our media thrones within Russia. But a lot of people start YouTube channels when they come here because, number one, like myself, and maybe for yourself, I don't want to speak for you, you feel lied to your whole life when you come here and everything is really normal.
Absolutely.
And boring. That's number one. And then number two, but in that transition period from being here on visas to getting your first residency permit, you're not allowed to work. So you got a lot of time to do YouTube and vlog. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Same thing I did. I had too much time on my hands.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to tell people what life is really like here.
Yeah. And it's shockingly normal. But the problem is sometimes I don't even really know quite what to do. This channel is more sort of political because, I don't know, I kind of get sick of talking about some of the more basic aspects of life in Russia, but everything is pretty reasonable. You just have to. But the one thing that we often talk, I won't mention any details, but when you and I talk privately, the one thing is that, boy, it's just a shame that so few people listen to us. I think we both do a good job of explaining a lot of the nuances of moving to Russia and this, that, and the other. And a lot of people want to ask us questions, and they just do the exact opposite, just to show us the middle finger or who knows what. So, yeah.
Yep. Everybody's an expert based on their experience. People need to understand, people like you and I help people do this all the time.
And for years.
Yes.
Well, anyways, Kevin, all right. I think we're now pretty clear. The missile situation you wrapped up quite succinctly, and with these visa centers, the main takeaway is that there's no panic, and that, yes, the Russian government is... And when you also, maybe I should say, as I've talked to a lot of people within the government, there's definitely, I'll put it this way, there's debate about what immigration should look like in Russia. There is very little debate about should people be allowed to visit Russia on tourist visas. That's not a debatable issue. The answer is yes, including for Americans. So, in theory, the government will continue to want to have contact, and for how many forums and expos and international, aren't the BRICS games taking place very soon or right now?
Yeah.
And international events. Yeah, they want people to come here. So, in theory, the whole visa thing is pretty solid. Immigration is a much hotter issue that is much more open to debate and could take a downswing at any moment or an upswing. Yep. You never know. So, but anyways, Kevin, thank you very much for your time. So, what?
So before we close, if people want to know where they can get visas to Russia in other countries. I've heard people say, oh, you got to be a resident. You have to, go jump through all these hoops. If you go to my YouTube channel, in the description of the video that I did on this last night on the closing of the visa centers, I have a link to a document that as of yesterday is a complete list of every embassy and consulate of the Russian Federation where a U.S. citizen can go and apply for a Russian visa, including Mexico and Canada. So,
well, here, give me a link to that after we sign off here, so I can put that link to that video right in the description right now. So anyways,
I'll do that.
Thanks, man. Much appreciated, dude. And anyways, to our dear viewers, stay strong. You can still visit Russia, even if things might be a little bit more chaotic than they used to be. Tim Kirby Russia, signing out.